Industry specifically, I mean, really started when we moved out to Colorado. I moved out with Tracy, and medical was just beginning at that point in time. Dispensaries weren't really operational, so medical cannabis existed. It was decriminalized, but it was much more of like a caretaker model, those types of things, people cultivating for themselves or for other patients. And as we moved to Colorado, really the first dispensary started opening up and those types of things. So my interest in the industry specifically began at that point in time, just watching, these things sort of unfold before my eyes. Got a job within the industry, worked my way up within it, but interest in cannabis in general has gone on a long time. As a self-medicator patient advocate since really high school, it was really exciting to be out in Colorado and witness a change. Specifically here in Maryland, laws were very different at that point in time. It's a big reason why we moved out to Colorado in the first place. So that would give a kind of glimpse of what sparked my interest in the industry and cannabis in general.
For me, I could I could piggyback on that since our story is shared. When we moved out to Colorado, cannabis wasn't really, and the cannabis industry wasn't really something that I viewed as could be like a long-term career path. And so when we were in Colorado, when I was out there, I was going to school. I got my bachelor's degree and I got my master's degree. And I very much thought that that was going to be my career path. I got my degree in biological anthropology. So I thought I was going to do human evolution studies for my career. And when I graduated there with my master's, there were not a lot of job opportunities in Colorado at the time. And I was not willing to move from Colorado because we loved Colorado. But there were a lot of job opportunities in the cannabis industry. And so I got a job working as a bud tender and a trimmer. And I, have worked a lot of different jobs in the cannabis industry, and I found my niche in cannabis compliance, which is actually where I ended up meeting Emily. And so I worked for a couple of different licenses out there, and those compliance skills that I got out there were some of the skills that were needed to help us write the application for Peake ReLeaf. And so that's kind of where my journey with the cannabis industry began.
Yeah, for me, kind of mimics the early part that Nate kind of mentioned. I think I've been a cannabis enthusiast through high school and, in my early 20s. And I think it wasn't until, I kind of my early 20s where I really started to realize that, I had been using this to kind of self-medicate, and, I helped me with sleep and some of the other issues I was dealing with. And then at that point, just kind of really kind of made me have a greater respect for what it was. And then when I saw the opportunity arise in Maryland, it was just seemed like the perfect chance to reach out to my good friends, Nate and Tracy here, and say, hey, I know you guys have been out in Colorado and operating in this industry. And I think that, we have a chance to kind of pull together something and put together a good team here and honestly start something for ourselves. And luckily enough, they thought that was a good idea. And they decided to take a risk and come out and apply with us. And here we are today. So I think that's kind of just been my journey into the cannabis industry, and specifically being out here in Maryland. It was the first opportunity I had to actually operate in it.
Mine's a little bit more serendipitous. I moved to Colorado after college to truly be a ski bum. I moved to Winter Park, and that's obviously not something you can make like a long career. You can, but you're not going to do it for very long. So I moved down to Denver, and I fell into a receptionist position at a local dispensary. Very quickly saw and loved helping people with this plant. I was self-medicating myself for most of my young adulthood. And that's also where I met Tracy. We moved up into this company very quickly. We saw that's actually a career that was going to enjoy.
go back around to what, Warren said. My background is actually in psychology from an educational standpoint. And, I went to school in Virginia, and I grew up in Maryland. And so laws in Maryland and Virginia were really strict with cannabis. And just kind of speaking on that self-medication thing, I was very interested in, the benefits of cannabis from a really early standpoint, and simultaneously also watching friends and family members get in serious trouble for cannabis. And, also the culture in college, very much a drinking culture and those types of things, and not dismissing the drinking culture necessarily. I enjoy beer from time to time, but cannabis has always been much more safer and beneficial to me and to others. And as I mentioned before, it was a big motivator for us to move out to Colorado. I mean, just the thought of states not prosecuting people was not only a breath of fresh air, but a huge reason of why we made the move out to Colorado.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I think is a little unique that I found, growing up around here and then just kind of, recognizing, speak with my peers, traveling more, is that, living outside the DC area, when I was in my high school years and even shortly after, I was going out to, protests in DC, smoke-ins. They used to have all these different types of events. And, it is kind of unusual to, I think as a whole, to have opportunities like that so close to where you grew up. And it kind of inspired me to have a little bit more of a, I guess, respect for advocacy. And, I think that's one of the reasons why I found myself kind of getting into legislation a little bit more and, trying to make a difference, because I could just see, what this plan has done. And, I think that we're on the right path, and hopefully we'll start seeing the right legislation get through. And, stories like Nate's on having to travel to a different state to, be in a different set of laws. Hopefully that will not be the case that anyone has to do here soon. So, that's the goal, and hopefully we keep fighting for it.
So I came about this in a really roundabout way. I think less direct than everybody else. My professional background is in IT and in, marketing. And, I was looking for a place to be a part of that felt less like a business for the sake of being a business, which you run into a lot when you work in IT. Something that felt more community-based, more people-focused. And I actually was having a conversation with Jason, Tracy's brother, and he mentioned that, oh, my sister is coming into town. They're going to be establishing a business here. It's in medical cannabis. I don't know if you'd be interested. And up until that point, I had never used cannabis to any degree. So I was curious about it, and I figured, why not? I had a conversation with Tracy and Nate and Warren, and really felt like it would be a great fit for me, and really just loved the, like I said, community-minded focus that you all had, and it just felt like it'd be great to be a part of. It would give me the opportunity to see what other things I could do in terms of community initiatives in the cannabis space, since it was such an emerging industry. And, we've been here for years now, but it still, in a lot of ways, feels kind of new. So that was how I entered it. Now I'm a patient. I'm a happy patient. It's been really integral in terms of my own personal health. I've been in some pretty severe car accidents, some things that have, threatened my personal health, and just having cannabis as a resource to help manage things like pain, chronic pain, have been, a godsend for me. So that's how I came aboard, and I really have enjoyed my time.
This has been a hotly contested topic, I think mostly between me and Nate. I swear I thought that I had came up with the name very early on in the application process, and I had stayed up and was like sketching logos and writing out names and things of that nature. And then I had I don't even know how many options that we were looking at considering at that point in time. But I will say Nate swears that my better half Angel came up with the name amongst that whole time period as well. So I am a smart enough man to say I really don't know who came up with the name, and I'm very happy that one of us did, and I think it's been really fitting ever since. And you know, I don't know if you all remember it any different, but that's pretty much how I remember. It's coming into being, happening.
Yeah, so I remember you saying that Angel came up with at least part of it, but it's been so long now that I don't really remember. But I had a memory of like Angel maybe coming up with like the Peake with the E on the end, or maybe Warren, you came up with the Peake with the E on the end, but she came up with like Peake ReLeaf. I don't quite remember, but I have memories
That's
of
what I
Angel
mean. It
being
was something
involved in it.
that's what I mean. There was a bunch of
But
options we were looking at, and I can't remember if she pieced them together or if you know, either way, it was a magical birthing of the name Peake ReLeaf that you know, is just this constant little enigma that I don't think you can crack.
But I think the name, you know, what we were searching for, we went through so many, we were just throwing names out at each other for a very long time. And what was important to us was to find a name that showed that we're a local company, that we're local people, that we're locally operated, that we're locally owned. You know, all the three of us, me, Warren, and Nate, being from Maryland, me and Nate from the Baltimore area, and Warren from being around Rockville, it was important that we showed, you know, that we're not a large company coming in. We are one of the small mom and pop shops, and we really wanted a name that reflected that. And so that's where the Peake from the Chesapeake comes in with the name.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of summarizes my memory too, is again, I think we were brainstorming. I don't know exactly if we had even had the release yet, but I know that when Peake came around, the E was very important. And so for that reason that came around, but I do remember Angel coming out with Peake ReLeaf, and I remember we had like 5 different names or something along those lines. And Warren, you brought it to the group and you were like, Angel came up with Peake ReLeaf. It rings off the tongue nicely. It has the E on the end. What do you guys think of this? And I just remember being like, yep, that's it. Let's go with that.
Like I said, that's pretty much how I remember it happening too, to you know, to the best of my ability. But I do know that it was always important to us, as I mentioned. You know, I think we wanted to have a local reference that was important to all of us, and you know, and through all of our applications, everything has been really important to try to have the least footprint on the environment as possible, and that's why, you know, referencing Chesapeake was so important to us. And you know, that's just kind of the local flavor that we wanted to have to our business and for our community.
Yeah, and I do believe you guys settled on the right name. I love how around the Rockville area, we are known as, you know, Peake. We're not, you know, Peake ReLeaf is a great name, but we know we've gotten it shortened too. Mostly we hear our locals and our everyday people coming in going, yeah, I'm going to Peake, or I'm going to stop by Gillies and then Peake. So I think you guys really made a great choice there.
I could speak more generally on this. I think for me, I was thinking about this, and like, I could point to a lot of different things, but they all kind of point to the same thing for me, and that is uncertainty. The cannabis industry is never certain, and not only because it's brand new and all those things, but there is just an endless bucket of curveballs, new regulations, different things like a pandemic that are thrown at you, and you would go, oh, but that's the same for every business, and absolutely it impacts every business. But because of regulations, and because this is a new industry, and because it's such a sensitive thing, it's always extra. Everything is always an extra 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to get something accomplished that for normal businesses isn't the case. And it's been that way from the application to finding property to construction to getting approved to establishing a workflow and reestablishing a workflow to new products entering the market, everything is uncertain and new. And so even as much planning as you can do, you are never going to troubleshoot every possible scenario. And so you always have to be on your toes. It's also what makes this industry really interesting and to a degree fun a lot, but it can be incredibly challenging, frustrating, and sometimes there's sleepless nights trying to figure out a problem.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of piggyback some of that, I think the whole uncertainty. I mean, when I was thinking about some of the biggest growing pains for the industry, I was kind of thinking as like, the industry as a whole. And I think it's just, the fact that it is so new, but in so many respects, it's not. And I think that's why I think, just legislatively, it can be so challenging. We don't have, Safe Banking Act, and there's so many different legislative bills from the federal government to, the state itself. And I think some of the biggest obstacles and, growing pains, if you will, for any business. And to that, I also think of, the success of this industry is, I mean, we can, get into boring stuff like tax legislation, things like that. Businesses in this industry pay so much more in taxes. And I think the reason that that's important is that raises costs to patients, that prevents these, cannabis businesses from giving better benefits to their employees. It prevents them from reinvesting in their businesses and being able to grow their businesses like any other business would be. And, the fact that, most cannabis businesses pay at least 5 times the amount of taxes as any other business is, it's one of those things where I knew when I was applying for this business and we were getting into here, I knew what the basically the way that government and legislation was on cannabis. But I was hopeful that we would start to see these changes in these last couple of years. Safe Banking Act's almost been passed for I don't even know how many years now. I mean, I think like 5 or 6 years it's almost been passing in the federal government. So it's just, I think at this point there's 37 medical states, and I think are we up to 18 adult use or 13? I think either way, it's a lot as far as the different medical and adult use states that we have. And so for me, I think as an industry, that's one of the biggest growing pains that I see. Me personally, I think is just trying to build something that we all took pride in, and make something that we would be proud of to not only manage and but also work in and create an environment and a culture in our business that we want to flourish and kind of be a representation of us.
Yeah, I kind of want to add a little snip. One of the growing pains is the lack of growth. I think both of them kind of alluded to that. Tracy and I were lucky enough to work for a big enough cannabis company in Colorado that we moved up very quickly, almost promoted every 4 months. I struggle with not being able to offer those same opportunities for the staff who've been with us since day one. We have several staff members with us who've been with us for almost 4 years, coming up on our anniversary in May. With those the lack of growth is why it's so important for us to be ever present with the legislation and get that move towards helping home grows and micro grows and things of those sorts. So really appreciate Warren and Tracy staying very active in the legislation part.
So a typical day for me, it has evolved over the years. COVID changed a lot of things. I think all 5 of us on this call right now, we all, pre-COVID, were on site every single day or, like 5 days a week. We had 5 desks in our manager's office that we all squished into. And that was what our days were like. in COVID, needing to reduce bodies in the workplace, making sure that we were able to practice social distancing. Some of us have transitioned to different remote roles, though we do, come on site very regularly. So right now, I'm on site 4 or 5 days a week. I get on site in the morning about an hour and a half before we open. So I get to the store early along with our assistant managers, and we start to get things ready for the day, doing opening duties, getting the sales ready for the day. Our manager on duty, who's our opening manager, will then come in a little closer to open, but still earlier than the rest of the team to further assist with those opening duties of getting the store ready. And our staff start to trickle in at that point, doing the important things, cleaning and mopping, and then also, getting the inventory ready for the day with the sales. And then we open, and opening is usually a pretty big time for us with the online orders. So usually we're in there fulfilling all those pre-orders that we get in, depending on the day of week. It can be a huge volume to do. So the first little bit of the day is really just making sure that we're taking care of those in an efficient manner, getting the patients who come to pick up those pre-orders and the walk-in patients in and out quickly. And then for me, then I'm able to transition a little bit to some of my more administrative work. Some of the things that I focus on in the facility based on my background, I focus a lot on compliance. I also do a lot of stuff with Kevin with community outreach. I also have a volunteer position where I am the president of the Maryland Medical Dispensary Association, which is the trade association for dispensaries in this state. So I have a lot of volunteer duties that I have to do with that. So throughout the day, I have calls that I have to, balance the on-site operational duties with some of these more administrative duties. And I do lots of training with our staff too. That's another thing that I really love about the role that I have in the company. We do lots of one-on-one trainings, group trainings, and those are things that I look forward to being able to continue to do with our staff to assist with their professional development and give them skills that they need for our positions and, for future positions as well. So that's a little bit about, my day-to-day.
We used to be living on top of each other in the office, and then COVID hit and we had to minimize bodies on site. And so I too have transitioned to about, I would say, 2/3 off site, 1/3 on, usually on site 1 to 3 days a week, depending on what's going on. My day-to-day is a lot of different things, but I think primarily I handle mostly ordering, inventory, accounting, promotion generation, strategic market analysis, data analytics, report generation. And that's a whole bunch of boring things to say. I run a lot of deals, I order a lot of product, and I pay attention to it. But outside of that, there's a lot of other things. So, given on site, I'll come in, usually touch base with staff, try and get opinions on how things are going, how products are doing. There's some training that goes on with that kind of stuff. There's lots of paper pushing and filing that I have to do physically on site, along with what I do remotely. And then, outside of that, kind of more globally speaking, as we build a company, we want to develop the culture that we want to see in a company. We want to develop the structure that's right and pathways. And so a lot of what goes on kind of ancillarily as a group, and I think we all wear this hat in different ways, is to how do we build a strong foundation to make a long-term company and keep a culture and a company that we would have wanted to work for, which I felt like was extremely lacking in the companies that I worked for and also, worked with. Is Emily mentioned a whole lot of growth. A whole lot of growth came with a whole lot of negligence to how they treated their employees, how they treated other partners that they worked with. And it was really important for me and us to put a focus on that and to not only train on what's specific on your workflow or cannabis in general, but what it means to work as a team, what kind of leader you are, what's your personality, how do you interact and communicate with people, skills that can hopefully be transitioned to future opportunities at Peake ReLeaf, but generally speaking, future opportunities anywhere. And so a large amount of thought goes into that as well.
And I think, as everyone mentioned, COVID just kind of, and like with all industries, just kind of, pushed us into the future at a rapid space. And we found ourselves in a situation where, I was working more remotely. But, just Nate and myself share some of the duties when it comes to ordering and finances and some of the accounting. But he does a miraculous job putting all that data into a way that we can all very easily understand it. I admittedly don't get involved in that aspect of it. I also deal with the human resources at our shop, and honestly, as we mentioned before, I get involved with a lot of legislative activity. Trying to hopefully resolve some of those growing pains that we discussed earlier. But I also serve as the chair of the Legislative Policy Committee of the Dispensary Association. I also serve on the Legislative Policy Committee of the Maryland State Chamber. I'm also on the Healthcare and Biopharma Committee of the State Chamber. Both things, or all three things, which I don't know that I ever would have anticipated, being involved in when we first got involved in the industry. So it's just kind of goes to show you that, life always exceeds expectations, and you never really know where you're going to go. So we just needed to kind of and that's kind of what was so great about our team, as we put together a team that we all had different strengths, and we kind of all fit into this puzzle and managed to kind of have our own little niche in this business, which I think is one of the reasons that we've managed to be successful. So in this very competitive industry. So
a typical day for me involves so much. As a director of creative marketing, you not only have to, operate on some of the tasks that seem to be day to day, like monitoring, social media marketing channels, or, our digital signage, or some of the things that our patient community is like daily interfacing with. But you also have to be in a management position with some of the internal and external resources that we utilize to help kind of push Peake ReLeaf forward. So, special shout out to the people that have, stepped into some of those roles on staff, like Mariah and Susan and Chris. And shout out to, Elena, someone who works as a creative producer that has also helped Peake ReLeaf kind of forward our, patient-minded mission. But internal development of marketing SOPs to reviewing data and analytics. There's a lot. I feel like if I were to sit and itemize everything, just if you can think of anything marketing related, that's my day to day.
Like Warren alluded to, it's such a competitive market. Maryland does have a lot of national companies. Since day one, we've tried to be an efficient company. We've tried to get our patients through the door as quickly as possible. We knew that was going to make us the most competitive in this market. So as Tracy gave me a middle name once, I've tried to make everything as efficient as possible. She likes to call me Miss Efficient. So I've been trying to, from day one, our workflow as quickly as possible. We tried to get you through our doors. We don't think it's necessary for you to have to be at a store for half an hour to 45 minutes. So that's really what I try and live and breathe, is trying to make our staff's life as easy as possible. And hopefully that trickles down to our patients' experiences also as well.
I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is something that was mentioned a little bit earlier, which is that cannabis businesses are not treated the same as normal businesses in terms of taxes. We are not able to write off normal business expenses. And so what that really means is it becomes very difficult for businesses to break even and to become profitable. All types of cannabis businesses are affected by this. It affects dispensaries the most because we are the ones who are doing the direct sales to patients, which by the federal government is the illegal thing that is happening. So it affects independent dispensaries the most, ones like ours that are locally owned, mom and pop shops, because we don't have any other licenses to kind of be able to spread out that tax burden on. So I've heard of particularly dispensaries being taxed at rates anywhere between like 80 to 90 or 95%. So that is, like Warren said before, we always knew about this issue and are hoping for a state level fix to this. But it's something that's really difficult for all cannabis businesses and especially dispensaries in the state of Maryland. And then especially your locally owned and operated single licenses, it's very difficult.
Would be the most surprising. I don't think people really understand the impact of that on a small business. But to take things maybe a little different direction, I think people would be surprised at the amount of different steps that it takes even to just fulfill a single order. We all know this is regulated heavily and that it is, a difficult process, but I think people still have this mindset that you just put flour into a jar and throw it in the bag and it's all done. Or maybe you're okay, make sure the testing's right. But from cash handling to banking audits to MMCC inspections to SOPs to regulation changes to receipts needing to be signed, even though there's a digital record of it, and they've stopped that in COVID. But there are so many nuances that go into just a simple order that I think would be surprising if somebody really sat down and watched the process from point A to Z and having not been in the industry of like how many steps go to just fill a single order.
Yeah, for me, I think, some of the most surprising things are, for the industry and business side of things are probably most certainly all the things that Tracy already mentioned. But just to, kind of lighten things up a little bit, I think probably the most shocking thing that I end up receiving a lot is just how much time we all spend in front of a computer. Just to kind of like piggyback what Nate was mentioning. It's everything has so many steps and it's so highly regulated. There's so many different systems that everything has to go through that literally we spend so much time in front of a computer. It's all I do all day every day, and it's one of those things that I think a lot of people think that if you're in the cannabis industry that you're weighing out and playing with flour all day, and it's just big joyous fun-filled adventure in cannabis. And I think people would be shocked at just how much time we all have to spend just behind the computer on our many different platforms and logging everything from all the different reports and regulated activities that we do have to do. So I think that is probably the just most shocking thing for most people when we first hear it.
One of the things I love to talk about and kind of brag about Peake is us dealing in bulk flour. That's not necessarily a surprise, but the products that come off of that, the Peake packs, we've started doing those deals pretty regularly. When you get a bulk bag of flour, there's a lot of small buds and shakes that come off of that. Our staff hand rolls all of those pre-rolls daily. We do shake pre-packs, small flour pre-packs. And a lot of the time when that flour comes in, we'll put an extra trim on it. So we will sometimes see trim for sale on our menu. We've also heard some patients say, man, there are a lot of people working at Peake ReLeaf on a daily basis. The patients come first. We'll help get the patients through the door quickly, but when we're not very busy, that's why you're seeing a lot of people in our store on a daily basis, or a lot of employees on a daily basis. Those Peake packs are very time consuming, so we can ensure that they get the quality control and quality check. So we're selling the patients great product because, as we all know, it's not the cheapest yet.
I would say on my end that I think people, especially in our patient community, would be surprised about how much goes into positioning ourselves on platforms that seem like it would otherwise be effortless. Like, having Peake ReLeaf be on Weed Maps or Leafly, for example, or having specific things show up on our social media channels or in our email newsletter or even through our text messages. There's a lot that goes into that from a regulatory perspective, from a compliance perspective, like rules that we have to adhere to trying to work within platforms that still see us as being illegal despite whatever regulations are passed within the state. There's so many nuances and so many hoops that we have to jump through just to ensure that we can provide the most pertinent information for our patients to make a purchasing decision, or just to show them what Peake ReLeaf as a company is doing in terms of community engagement. Just something as simple as this is what we're doing for the people in our community that we care about, and having that appear in a place that patients can see it is a process. Everything is a lengthy process. And while it may seem effortless on the patient end because you see our products on, or you see products that we carry rather on Weed Maps or on Leafly, just know that there's a lot of work to ensure that those experiences for our patient community are as smooth as possible. And we take a lot of pride in doing that work, whatever legwork is involved, to make sure that our patients have a great experience. What are you most excited for when it comes to Peake ReLeaf's future? And I guess as the second part to that question, what are you most excited for the medical cannabis industry here in Maryland?
I could start. I would say for Peake ReLeaf's future, like what I'm most excited about, and this kind of ties into some of the work that I do around the store, is really as we become, we're approaching our anniversary. Gosh, what year anniversary? 4-year anniversary. Yeah, 4. We've become a much more established business, and there's certain areas that I can put more of my attention to now than that I couldn't do when we first opened. And I'm really excited for the opportunity to really build upon the training programs that we have started at Peake ReLeaf, the trainings that are giving our staff, skills that will help them professionally no matter what they do in their life. It's really my ambition, to really make one day I'd like a huge training program that's very comprehensive, and we're very slowly building chunks of it. And what our ambitions are is to have a company that our team wants to work for. I would love for it to be a company that every person could make a career out of. I feel like that is something that is not really offered to like our generation anymore. It's something that maybe our parents or grandparents' generation had companies that could offer them careers for 30 years or for their life, and that's just not something that we have anymore, I feel like. And so that may not be something that's right for all of our employees. And so to be able to give them the skills that they need to, move on when it's time for them to move on, or to stay with us in the long term, like I want to be able to offer that for our team. So I guess that's what I'm most excited about for Peake ReLeaf specifically, is to continue to build that culture that can build upon that over time. And for Maryland's market, I'm excited to continue to see more different products in the market. We just got edibles in the last year, and before that we didn't really have a full availability of the types of products that are out there. And so I'm just really excited to see the kinds of products that continue to come out into the future, because if you travel to a lot of states that have had, you know, especially those that have adult use programs that have been around a long time, you can see that there's a lot of things that we don't have here yet. So I'm excited to really see those types of products being brought into Maryland's market.
I guess I could go. Speaking on Peake ReLeaf, you know, I'm excited to continue building on the foundation that we have. I think statewide adult use is in everybody's ears. And so certainly excited for an opportunity on the state level with that, and hopeful Peake ReLeaf can continue that journey. But in the short term, just real happy with where we're at right here. Real happy to see states like Virginia changing their laws, and, you know, across the board, these things are changing. And so this year for me is a lot of focusing on the foundation that we've built, and to make sure it's rock steady and hard. And I'm pretty confident that it is, but I want to continue the strength of that foundation to prepare ourselves for what I feel like is not a question of if, but when these things start to happen, and to make sure that we can continue on the direction that we put this company forth. Statewide, you know, there's a lot of important things. And of course I mentioned adult use, but, you know, automatic expungement and getting rid of as much as possible the stigma against cannabis is really important. And already we've seen a lot of that stigma lift. We've seen decriminalization and those types of things, but like we really need automatic expungement. We really need 280E, which is a tax legislation, to be lifted at the state level. Those things are going to really help move the medical market forward, and simultaneously we can start looking at what an adult use market looks like, and finally give adults the freedom to choose whether or not this is a good thing for them.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just not only the maturation of this industry, but our business as a whole. Just to kind of touch on, or expand, I guess you would, on what Trace and Nate already said. It's really great to see we have a lot of our staff who have actually been with us since we've opened. A lot of them are now in management positions. Nate, Tracy, and myself, and Emily, for that matter, have all, kind of started at the bottom in our respective businesses, and been able to kind of climb the ladder to reach a point in management or managing a business. And that's something that we were all able to do before we came and founded Peake ReLeaf. And so I think it's been really important for us to make sure that we promote from within, and we really take care of the people who are helping Peake ReLeaf be profitable, be a successful business, be a community partner, and really kind of be what we want to see Peake ReLeaf be seen by the community. And I think that it's just kind of I'm really excited to see how our business continues to mature. I'm excited to potentially have more opportunities to expand our business in the future. Whether that's something as simple as expanding our delivery radius, or if it's the ability to open another location. It's definitely something that I'm excited about for the future. And I'm excited for the industry as a whole, as we start to see legislation being discussed on the federal and the state level. And as hopefully we can right some of these wrongs that we've seen in years past, and from the war on drugs. And I think we have a rare opportunity to really take a meaningful action on a lot of these issues, and that's probably what I'm most excited for. So hopefully we'll see some of those changes in the near future.
Something I'm definitely excited to see in the industry, we've just kind of started seeing, is I've been talking to the staff about CBD concentrates since day one, how much I loved using CBD concentrates in Colorado. We've just now started seeing isolate on the market. It's one of my favorite products. We just got CBD isolate from Nature's Heritage. Really using a lot. We got more CBD hemp products in our lobby, which I'm really excited about. Just the progression of these products available in our store is something that just really excites me, and I feel like it's closer than it was a couple years ago.
I think for me, just in terms of the future of Peake ReLeaf, I'm really excited about the continued emphasis that we're placing on patient initiatives, whether it's patients' rights, whether, like Nate mentioned, expungement clinics. And, one of the things that we're really proud of is partnering with organizations that are not kind of fly by night, that really have a vested interest in improving the community and improving what, cannabis means for the community. I'm excited to, facilitate more of the types of things that we've done in the past, maybe expungement to employment pipelines and partnering up with other like-minded organizations through Peake to get more people that have their records expunged into the industry proper. We know a lot of people that have been incarcerated have expertise that may overshadow some of the people that we call industry experts. So it will be great to see some of those people get the opportunity to benefit from something that they were previously incarcerated for, and wrongfully so. In terms of the Maryland market, and just the cannabis communities in Maryland, generally speaking, I'm much looking forward to outdated stereotypes kind of finally starting to fade away, especially for communities of color as it relates to our relationship with cannabis. Um, Greater respect for the legacy market and more home grow initiatives. Providing a normal shopping experience for customers. I mean, right now we exist on our own little island in a lot of ways. We have to use specific tools and IT solutions that are built for the cannabis industry, and we can't take advantage of the ease of use that some other solutions may provide that customers may be and patients may be accustomed to. We have to always use a tailor-made solution because people still shy away from the idea of working with cannabis, even in an ancillary way. And I'm also looking forward to more cannabis tech companies as opposed to tech companies that work in cannabis. And the difference is, again, something that allows us to be better for our patients as opposed to kind of like shoehorn solutions that we have to spend a lot of time workshopping to make work. It's not fun. So I'm looking forward to more cannabis tech companies that are really, again, patient focused, ease of use centered, and just help facilitate this type of relationship that we want to continue to have with our patient community.